this is Carla and welcome back to the studio, and thank you for joining me for another episode of our monthly Christmas card inspiration. So a little background regarding what this series of videos are about. On the first, give or take the first of each month throughout the year, I create two fairly simple, duplicatable, mass-producible type Christmas cards. I may use just a single stamp set, or it could be a bundle, or maybe it was part of a whole suite of product. So the whole idea is to create these cards to just give you some inspiration if you want to create your own cards throughout the year instead of like what I sometimes do and wait till near the end of the year to do it. And then of course they all don't get done. So feel free, if you have the stamp set that I am using, feel free to use that. Or if you don't, feel free to use anything that it is that you have in your stash. So for this episode, I will be using the Piece to You stamp set. And along with it, I'll also be bringing in the Stylish Shapes dies. And I'll also be using the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. Now, the stamp set and this embossing folder are both retired, but the Stylish Shapes are still available in our annual catalog. So for my cards, like I said, they're going to be they are fairly simple, and they're actually laid out in the same way, just different stamps and different greetings that I used on it, and also different colors. So for my first card, I have a piece of Lost Lagoon cardstock. This measures 8.5 by 5.5, and I've scored it at 4.25. I have a piece of basic white. This measures 5.25 by 4. And then I have a couple of scraps of basic white cardstock. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to fold and burnish my card base. And I'll go ahead and I'll set that aside. Now on my bigger piece of basic white, I will be embossing that with this Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to do all die cutting and embossing at the same time. So then on these pieces here, I'm going to do some stamping on. So for this card, I'm going to bring in the greeting that says, "Peace to You at Christmas." And I'm going to bring in my Lost Lagoon ink. And I'm going to ink this up. And I'm going to stamp that right in the middle of this smaller scrap of basic white. Okay. And I'll set that aside. That will be die cut with this die here that's part of the Stylish Shapes dies. So I'll set that aside. And then for this bigger piece here, I'm going to bring in my Stamparatus. Now I know this is retired, but this, if you have a stamp positioning tool, this will help in doing this next part. I'm going to be stamping a bigger image, and in the event that the image doesn't stamp right the first time, I can go back over and stamp again. So this is the image in the stamp set that I will be using. There are two larger images. This is the one that I'm using. So I'm going to take my cardstock and I'm going to put this more like over on this side here. Now, the one thing with the Stamparatus, it does have this hinge. So if you put a stamp near the side where the hinge is, what'll happen if I had this cardstock all the way over here, there's a gap. So the stamp won't reach this side of the cardstock. So I'm going to move this over to the side, more off to the left. And I'm going to take my magnet that I covered with some washi tape, makes it a little bit easier in picking it up. And then I'm going to take my stamp and I'm going to place that. I'm going to move this up actually so you can see a little bit better. And I'm going to place this right about here. Move my magnet up just a little bit. And I'm going to place this right about here. And then I'm going to pick it up with my plate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stamp set, the case itself, and I'm going to place that underneath my plate so that way the plate lays flat when I go to ink it up. So I'm going to ink this up, and I want to try and get it with an even coverage of ink the first time. Now if it doesn't, then I can re-ink it again and go back over it. I want to try and get it the first time around. Okay, and then I'm going to put this down. And then this is a tool that I ordered off of Etsy quite a while ago. And the seller may still be out there. I'll have to look that up. But if you, I don't know what kind of tool you would call this. Yeah, I don't know what the name escapes me as to what you would call this if you were to do a search. This was created using a 3D printer. And if I remember right, when I got this, it was available in a lot of different other colors. Okay, so there's one spot here that it didn't get all the ink, but I can see the ink is still there. So I'm going to kind of press with my fingers. And hopefully I got all the ink so it's not fully off. So I'll hold that down for a little bit. Okay, just a little bit more. Now I'm going to come and just kind of press a little bit harder. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to bring in, well, first I'm going to close this ink pad up, and then I'm going to bring in my chamois, and I'm going to clean this stamp off. They're nice and squeaky clean, and then I'll clean my greeting off too. Okay. And I'll set that aside, and then I will take my stamp and I will go ahead and put these back really quick. Okay, and then I will pull this one out and just place that on there. And I got my greeting for the next card. So I just want to put that on there for now since I'm going to be using that on our next card. Okay, so now I'm at the part where I'm going to do my die cutting and my embossing. So for this image here, I have one of the larger squares from that Stylish Shapes dies, and I'm going to die cut that. So I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in all of my pieces. So I'm going to take my embossed piece and I'm going to bring in my seal. and I'm going to do it with a light touch so that way the adhesive doesn't tear my embossed cardstock. And I'm going to make sure that my card opens up the right way so I don't put it on upside down. But at this part, it wouldn't matter if it was upside down because this is, it doesn't matter. Either way that you put it on, it's still going to look the same. But it's when you put all the other pieces on that it's important. So for these pieces here, I'm going to bring in my dimensionals. And I'm going to add some to the back. I want to place one in every corner of my stamped image, and then one in the middle so it doesn't sag. And then I'm going to add 3 to my label. Okay, and I'll remove all the paper backings off of these. Set that aside. Okay, pick up all the little paper backings. Okay, so I'm going to take this piece here and I'm going to kind of come up a little bit and have it centered from left to right, like so. And then the greeting, I'm going to add that below it and try and center it between the image. Okay, so I'm going to press that down. And then for my embellishments, I have these adhesive back snowflakes. And for this one, I'm going to use the ones that are a little more translucent. The other ones, they're both iridescent, but the one is more white iridescent, and this is more of the clear iridescent. So I'm going to use the more clear one. I'm going to bring in my Take Your Pick tool, and then I'm going to add a few onto my card. So with the color of these, they kind of blend in with the Moss Lagoon color. And then one more. I'm going to place that one right down here. So that is, let me move this out of the way. So that is our first card. Very simple monochromatic card using the Moss Lagoon. Okay, so on to our second. Okay, so for my second card, I have a piece of Starry Sky. This measures 8.5 by 5.5, and I have it scored at 4.25. I then have a piece of basic white. This measures 5.25 by 4, the same size as I used on the previous card. And then I have a couple of scraps of basic white. So for this card, I'm going to fold and burnish my card base. And I'll set that aside. And just like my last card, on this larger piece here, I'm going to emboss it with this textile. What is this? Tasteful Textile? Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. So we're going to put that aside because again, all embossing and die cutting will be done at the same time. So then on these two pieces, I'm going to do some stamping. So I have a greeting that says, "May God's hope and love shine on you this season." And I'm going to bring in my Azure Afternoon ink. I'm going to ink this up and I'm going to stamp it in the middle of this smaller piece of cardstock. It's interesting. I did a holiday video featuring Easter projects, and here the next day I'm doing cards that are Christmas. And it's all about Jesus. Okay, so with this one, again, I'm going to use that same die as I used before, and that greeting fits right in there perfectly. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to leave that ink there. And another ink that I'm going to bring in too is Orchid Oasis. Put that aside too. And then I'm going to bring in my Stamparatus again. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing as what I did on the last card. So I'm going to take this piece of cardstock and I'm going to add that over here. Make sure I don't put my knuckles in the ink. And then I'm going to take my stamp and I'm going to place, I'm actually going to come down a little bit lower with this and put my magnet more on the cardstock. So I'm not worried so much about lining it up perfectly straight. And just going to press that on there. Okay, and then I'm going to bring my stamp case in again and put that underneath, like so. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Azure Afternoon ink and I'm going to ink this up. Now my Azure Afternoon is very, very inky. Okay, I'll close this up. And then with my Orchid Oasis, I'm going to bring in a sponge dauber and I'm going to pick up some of this ink and I'm going to go around the Holy Family and just kind of create a halo over the Azure Afternoon ink. So I'm just going to tap and bring in some scratch paper because I want to put some more of that Orchid Oasis ink, but I know that I'm also picking up some of that Azure Afternoon. I'm just going to go around, and again I'm going to wipe off some of that ink and pick up some more, and then I'm going to come up the side here. Okay. Alright, let's put that out of the way so that way I don't get it all over myself. And I'm going to bring my little tool in again. I'm just going to press down and try and get all this ink from the stamp onto my cardstock. Let me move this out of the way. Let me close this up. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, it looks pretty good. Okay, so we can get that out of the way. Okay, we're done with that. Okay, so you can see that there's the lighter blue, and then I did kind of like this halo effect around them using the Orchid Oasis. So it really doesn't look so much purple, but it looks bluish. It looks almost like the Starry Sky, or a shade of the Starry Sky ink. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my chamois again, and I'm going to clean the stamp off, and I'll take care of the greeting as well. Okay. And then I'm going to remove this, and let me remove the stamp and close this up. I'll get it out of the way. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this part here, like I mentioned before, I'm going to emboss this piece of basic white using the embossing folder, and then I will die cut the greeting with this label die from the Stylish Shapes dies. And then for this piece, there is no die, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my mini trimmer. Now this mini trimmer was one that Stampin' Up! Offered as a celebration joining special. I believe it was also with a 6x6 assortment of DSP. So we don't sell this anymore. There are ones that are very similar to it out on Amazon. They're just a different color, but I'll be using this to then trim out this image and leaving a very small white border around. So with that, I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in all of my pieces. So I'm going to start off with adding adhesive to the back of my embossed piece. These cards are basically, they're laid out the same way. The only differences are the color choices that I used and the images. So I'm going to adhere that. And then I'm going to bring in my dimensionals. And I'm going to add some to the back of this. There. And one right there. And take off these backings. Okay, and then let me add 3 to my greeting piece. And I'll remove these backings. Okay, and then I'm going to take my bigger image and I'm going to place that in the middle, again, in the middle between the left and the right, and a little bit closer to the top. And then the greeting, I'm going to take that and I'm going to kind of center that below it, like so. Okay, and then for the embellishments, I'm going to use these adhesive back snowflakes, but this time I'm going to use the iridescent white ones. And I'm going to add 3 of these onto the actual stamped image. And one more down here. Okay, so there is the second card. So let me bring in my first card. Okay, so here are the 2 cards that we made today. This is our monthly Christmas card inspiration using the Piece to You stamp set. It's the same exact layout, same type of background. The only difference is I utilized the 2 different stamp sets using different greetings and changed up the color on both of them. So pretty easy cards to create. So if you like the projects that I created for you, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. It does help me in not only growing my channel, but it also helps me in building my Stampin' Up! Business. Now, I want to just put out there that I also do an in-person monthly class. I usually do it on the first Saturday of every month, going from the month of February through November. And what this special class is, that it's a time to come together and create your own Christmas cards if that's what you would like to do. I find that if I do so many cards each month, by the time it hits November, I have all my Christmas cards done, and then all I have to do is just write in them and address the envelopes and mail them out in early December instead of not making any because I've run out of time, because we do know as we hit Thanksgiving and Christmas, things do get really busy. So if you are local to me here in Memphis, Tennessee, my email is in the description of this video. If you are interested, it is a free class. You can utilize any of the stamp sets that I have. The only thing that I ask is that you provide your own cardstock, embellishments, designer series paper, whatever it is that those consumable items that you want to put on your card. So again, thank you everyone for joining me. And until next month, everyone have a blessed one. Bye bye.